When we say transformational, we want a salary system that's tied to a meaningful share of revenue that we help generate. It's the same standard that we see in men's professional leagues. But along with that, and as these conversations evolve, we can begin discussing more of the items that are also priorities for us, which include better working conditions across the board, including playing and practice facilities. And then, of course, protections to honor the players who built the league, the legends of this league, while continuing to set up the next generations for success.
Imagine you're in the middle of the most important business negotiation of your career. Your future and the future of hundreds of your colleagues depends on getting this deal right. You're the lead negotiator, representing everyone at the table. And then, right in the middle of these talks, you accept a competing offer from the other side's biggest rival. That's essentially what just happened in women's basketball. Nneka Ogwumike, the president of the Women's National Basketball Players Association, just signed with Project B, a new Saudi-backed league that's openly positioning itself as a competitor to the WNBA. And she did this while leading negotiations for the WNBA's new collective bargaining agreement. The same negotiations that will determine salaries, working conditions, and the future structure of the league. If you're just hearing about this, I get it, it sounds confusing, but once you understand what's really happening here, you'll see why this could reshape professional women's basketball. Before we dive in, hit subscribe so you don't miss updates on this developing story, because trust me, there's more coming.
Yes, Project B is also an off-season league, but they have promoted themselves as a league that wants to rival the WNBA. When Unrivaled was coming out with their league, they always said that they don't want it to compete with the WNBA. It is something that's completely different. It's 3v3, it's all of these things. That was that, and the WNBA still doesn't like that, okay? Do you think for 1 second that the WNBA and its owners are going to be happy about this league? This is something that we've heard through the grapevine that is going on in these negotiation talks for the new WNBA CBA, is that they don't want their players playing in off-season leagues. Nneka has already signed up for an off-season league. So if it gets to the point in the CBA when they agree that players are going to get a higher salary, they're going to get, say, a higher revenue split, all of these things, but you can't play during the off-season, these players have already signed contracts for these things, which essentially means that Nneka couldn't play in the WNBA if that happened, or she'd have to break her contract with Project B.
Let's start with the basics. Project B isn't a small startup trying to make women's basketball work on a tight budget. This league is backed by Saudi Arabian money, which means they have resources that dwarf almost any other women's sports league. Here's their pitch. They want 66 elite players across 6 teams of 11 women each. They're offering salaries higher than the WNBA currently pays, plus equity stakes in the league. The season runs for 14 weeks starting in April 2027, which technically doesn't overlap with the WNBA's regular season. Games will be played overseas in Europe and Asia. According to the Associated Press, Nneka explained her decision by saying, "It's not something that's usually offered to us," and by us, I mean women athletes. For there to be an entry level of equity across the board was eye-catching. On the surface, this sounds like another off-season opportunity for players to earn money. But there's a crucial difference. When Unrivaled launched their 3v3 league, they were careful to position themselves as complementary to the WNBA, not competitive. Project B isn't being subtle about their ambitions. They want to be a traveling circuit like Formula One or professional golf, complete with what they call premier cities and championship tournaments. They're explicitly marketing themselves as a rival. To understand why this matters, we need to look at what happened in men's golf. In 2025, PGA Tour events averaged 2.66 million viewers for final rounds on CBS and NBC. LIV Golf, the Saudi-backed competitor that pays players significantly more, averaged 385,000 viewers on Fox. For head-to-head Sunday coverage, the PGA Tour averaged 3.1 million viewers, while LIV Golf averaged 175,000. The highest-rated LIV event of the year, LIV Miami, drew 484,000 viewers, not even breaking the 1 million mark. But here's what's important. LIV Golf's investors don't seem concerned about these numbers. They continue paying top players regardless of viewership or profitability. This is the model Project B appears to be following. Invest heavily in talent acquisition, regardless of immediate financial returns. Now we need to talk about who's sitting at the WNBA negotiating table right now. This is where things get complicated. Nneka Ogwumike, WNBPA president, signed to Project B with equity. Kelsey Plum, player representative, signed to Unrivaled with equity. Elizabeth Williams, Brianna Turner, Alicia Clark, all signed to Athletes Unlimited with equity. Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, co-founders of Unrivaled. Every player representative negotiating the new WNBA CBA has a financial stake in a competing league. This creates an unusual dynamic. If negotiations break down and the WNBA season is delayed or canceled, these representatives have alternative income sources most WNBA players don't. Reports suggest that WNBA owners want to limit or restrict players from participating in off-season leagues. From their perspective, this makes sense. They're investing in franchises and want players focused and available. But many top players have already signed contracts with these off-season leagues. If the new CBA prohibits off-season play, what happens to those existing contracts? To understand why this timing is particularly rough, you need to know what's happening on the ownership side of the WNBA. The league just sold its Golden State expansion franchise for $50 million. Tech executives and major corporations are buying teams. The WNBA has never looked more attractive as a business investment. These new owners are putting serious money into the league, not just expansion fees, but investments in facilities, marketing, and player development. They're betting on the WNBA's growth trajectory, and part of that bet assumes players will be available, healthy, and focused on making the WNBA season successful. From their perspective, watching star players sign with competing leagues during CBA negotiations isn't just frustrating, it undermines the entire business model they're investing in. If your top players are spending 14 weeks overseas, potentially getting injured or fatigued, and building their brand for a rival league, why would you pay premium salaries? The owner's concern isn't unreasonable. They want restrictions on off-season play not just to be controlling, but because they're making significant financial commitments and need some assurance of return. The problem is, players have spent years taking whatever money they could find, overseas contracts in Russia, China, Turkey, because WNBA salaries alone weren't enough to build financial security. Now that better domestic opportunities exist through Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited, players aren't eager to give those up. This is the fundamental tension. Owners want commitment, players want options, and Project B just made the options significantly more attractive.
B is talking about the top 66 players. I doubt that they care about some hardship player who's coming in and out of the league. Their dream is to play professional basketball. They're working for that spot. Project B isn't offering a salary to that player. That player needs the WNBA more than they need. Again, Unrivaled as well is offering spots to the top players in the WNBA. And so that's where those players who are at the middle to bottom tier level when it comes to the those are the real ones who are hurt by all of this.
While star players now have multiple options and income streams, that's not true for most players in the league. Project B is targeting 66 elite players. Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited are similarly focused on established stars, but what about the player on a hardship contract? The player fighting for a roster spot? The developmental player hoping for their breakthrough season? These players need the WNBA. They need 12 teams with full rosters providing opportunities. If CBA negotiations fail and the season is delayed or canceled, they're the ones who suffer most. They're not getting offers from Project B. They're not equity holders in Unrivaled. They need the league to function. The WNBPA represents all players, but when its leadership has financial interest in competing leagues, there's at least a perception that their priorities might not align with the majority of players who lack those same opportunities. Here's what makes this situation particularly painful. The WNBA just had its best season ever. Caitlin Clark's rookie year drove record viewership and attendance. Her rivalry with Angel Reese captivated sports fans who'd never watched women's basketball before. Arenas were selling out. The league secured better broadcast deals. Expansion teams were being added. This was supposed to be the moment. After decades of struggle, the WNBA was breaking through to mainstream relevance. The 2024-25 season proved there's genuine appetite for women's professional basketball when it's marketed properly and features compelling personalities. But momentum is fragile in sports media. The casual fans who just discovered the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark aren't diehards yet. They're not going to wait through a lockout. They're not going to track down streaming services to watch Project B games played overseas. If the WNBA season is disrupted or delayed, those new fans will find something else to watch. And once they're gone, getting them back is exponentially harder than keeping them engaged. This is why the timing of Nneka's signing feels particularly significant. The league is at a pivotal moment, not struggling for survival, but poised for real growth. A labor dispute now could derail years of progress. The owners know this, the players know this, and yet here we are. Project B has announced they've signed other players beyond Nneka, but those names haven't been revealed yet. Angel Reese and Sabrina Ionescu both declined to play in Unrivaled this season, which seems surprising at the time. Were they waiting for Project B? Did they already have deals in place? There's also the equity component to consider. While it sounds appealing, equity isn't immediate cash. It requires the company to grow in value over time, and typically the only significant payouts come when a company is sold or goes public. These are percentages of percentages, not guaranteed millions. The equity only has value if these leagues succeed long term. And that's an open question. Can Project B build a sustainable audience playing games overseas? The WNBA just had its best year for attendance and viewership, driven by players with deep community connections and compelling storylines. Can you replicate that momentum with a traveling international circuit? If this situation happened in the NBA, NFL, or MLB, the union president signing with a rival league during CBA negotiations, it would dominate sports coverage for weeks. It's a significant development that deserves more attention than it's getting. I don't know how this resolves. Maybe having alternative options gives player representatives the leverage to secure better terms from the WNBA. Maybe it means they're willing to risk a work stoppage because they have financial safety nets. Maybe the presence of Project B forces WNBA owners to offer more competitive compensation. What's clear is that women's professional basketball is at a crossroads. The next few months of CBA negotiations will determine whether the league capitalizes on recent growth or whether that momentum gets derailed by a labor dispute. This situation raises important questions about representation, conflicts of interest, and who really benefits when competing leagues emerge. There are no easy answers, but these are conversations worth having. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think this helps or hurts the WNBA in the long run? And if you want to stay updated as the story develops, subscribe and turn on notifications. Use the hype feature if you can, as it helps this kind of in-depth coverage reach more people. This is a pivotal moment for women's basketball. The decisions made in the coming weeks could define the sport for years. I'll be here tracking every development and breaking down what it means. See you in the next one.